This week, the Queensland Government brought in new mining laws to protect valuable projects from costly and time-consuming vexatious challenges. But many landholders say the result is far from balanced and strips rights from farmers and communities who may want to fight mines in their midst. And as Kathy McLeish reports, there's particular anger about one last-minute amendment.
Rob McCreth's farm is on the eastern Darling Downs, known for having some of the best black soil cropping land around. And it's famous for something else. It's the only community group to have stopped a coal mine in Queensland. The community got together and formed Friends of Felton, and for 4.5 years they fought an application for an open-cut coal mine in the Felton Valley.
Yes, it was a big battle and it went on for a long time and it was very draining on the whole community, but we stuck together and we're very proud that we won. In the end, it was intervention of Campbell Newman on his election. It was an election promise not to allow mining here, and he kept his promise, and we're very grateful to the Premier for that.
The question is that the clauses as amended stand part of the bill. Those of that opinion say aye. Those against
so they were surprised when the government passed new mining laws this week.
This amendment is not only doing over farmers in Queensland, they're doing over the whole of Queensland.
This latest bit of legislation is very alarming. It's a very extreme piece of legislation, particularly in the way that it takes away the rights of ordinary people to object to mining proposals.
The Mineral and Energy Resource Common Provision Bill 2014 is designed to streamline processes and cut red and green tape. The Mining Minister says vexatious objections have stifled economic development, and that costs all Queenslanders.
What the Minister and the Government has wanted to do is amalgamate legislation to streamline it. Nobody has a problem with that, but what's happened is the landholders' rights have been totally degraded and stripped when brought into this new common provisions legislation.
Glenn Martin works exclusively with landholders affected by mining and gas issues.
I'm a landholder. I have a strong passion for that. I'm a lawyer.
He says the new laws restrict the rights of landholders to object to a mining lease application, and that while under the old laws anyone could object on any grounds, under the new legislation the only people who can object to a mining lease are the landholder and the adjoining and access landholders on limited grounds, and the local council, but only where its infrastructure is affected. And he says on the environmental authority that controls how the mining is conducted, on a small standard type mine, no one can have input or object to the conditions. On a large scale operation, such as an open cut mine, anyone can object. But only to the environmental conditions, not to the mining lease. He's also raised concerns that restricted areas have been removed from legislation, becoming regulations under the control of bureaucrats.
We previously had for mining leases 100 metres laterally around a house and permanent buildings, 50 metres around other important, very important infrastructure like stockyards, bores, dams, watering troughs. So the sacrosanct area of bores, dams, troughs has gone. Couldn't even keep that.
And at the 11th hour, the Minister introduced another amendment.
What we saw on Tuesday night at 5 minutes to midnight in the Queensland Parliament was the biggest reduction in community rights against big mines that this state has ever seen.
Green Senator Larissa Waters says the amendment means if the Coordinator General is satisfied the conditions are adequate, objections are futile because the Land Court is effectively sidelined.
We used to have a process where the community could have a say and at least raise issues where somebody might have gotten it wrong and a court could have a look at it. That's now gone. This is a huge step backwards, and the Queensland Government just know no limits, but they've clearly gone too far here. You can't just silence Queenslanders, and that's what they're trying to do, and I think it's going to come back to bite them.
Advocates say there were 176 submissions on the discussion paper and 288 to the Parliamentary Committee. But when its report came down, there were only 4 recommendations, and they say they failed to recognise the significant concerns that had been raised.
It feels as if there's been a sort of a takeover of the government by the mining industry. It's a bit like a coup, you know. It's not a military coup. It's sort of like a minerals coup, I suppose. It feels like this is completely unfair. You know, this has gone so far to favour the mining industry. It's as if the government's gone to them and said, well, you know, in your wildest dreams, what would you like? What sort of legislation would you like? And this is the sort of stuff that, you know, the mining industry would be hard-pressed to write something like this themselves.
We welcome some of the changes that have come through in the legislation. It does streamline the processes for objections to mining leases. Is it everything we were looking for? Well, certainly not, but it's a step in the right direction.
Michael Roach heads Queensland's peak body for the resources sector.
We are seeing project after project held up in the Land Court where arguments about spurious impacts of these projects were taking up the time of the Land Court and prolonging the approvals processes inordinately. Projects were taking 15 months, 18 months to get through the Land Court.
He says the new laws that reduce the right to object to affected landholders and councils are fair.
Everyone will have the opportunity to object to the Environmental Authority, so they can put their concerns to the Land Court around issues to do with air quality, water, noise. All those issues are up for grabs in front of the Land Court. So I don't accept that there's been a tilting of the balance away from landholders. There are many opportunities to have their say.